I begin today by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the land upon which this podcast is recorded, and I pay my respects to the elders past, present, and emerging.
Dark Mirror.
Dark Mirror.
Dark Mirror.
Dark Mirror.
Dark Mirror with Jessicka Ann.
Welcome to Dark Mirror. It is me, your host, Jessicka Ann, and today's conversation with Kylie Ryan feels like a particularly timely one, while also ironically being kind of a timeless one. We get into a conversation around what shapes our relationship dynamics, and not just in intimate partnerships, but also the relationships that we have with our clients, the relationships that we have with the people that we lead, and also how these shapes also play out on the macro level and often perpetuate patterns that keep us stuck and in conflict and missing one another. If you aren't familiar with Kylie's work, Kylie has been in this industry for over 20 years. She is the director of the Spiral School of Awakening and the founder of the SuperCoach Society. She is an emotional intelligence expert, and her unique body of work, the Heart Alchemy method, is what inspired me to have her on to have this conversation, because I've had the opportunity to experience it personally, and I feel that it really takes some of these shapes that form our patterns inside relationship to a whole new level for us to transcend that energy and create something unique and empowering for all concerned. So without further ado, here's my conversation with Kylie Ryan. Today's guest is someone that I have had on my vision board to have a podcast for the last few years. So it feels like quite an accomplishment to have her here with me. Kylie, I would love for you to share a little bit more. The topic that I really wanted to pick your brain on is understanding more around relational intelligence and some of the dynamics that play out inside that, not just on a personal level, but also when we are facilitating and leading. How did this topic of understanding what really makes relationships work or not work become such a core topic for you?
Well, it probably goes back to my childhood, Jessicka. Doesn't it all start there, right? It's like, is it anything if it's not mummy and daddy issues? I mean, it's so interesting, actually. The place where it kind of professionally became really relevant, the body of work that I've been working on probably for the last decade as a coach and coach trainer, but like it's really kind of come to the fore is my Heart Alchemy body of work, which is about transforming the drama triangle, which you got to experience. We had a little kind of dynamic up in Queensland at one of Sam's events a little while ago at Weird Business, which was fun. But to kind of answer your question, I was teaching NLP. How long ago? Maybe a decade ago. And I had some coaching students who were going through my NLP mentorship, which at that time I was running it as a year-long mentorship program as opposed to a 7-day intensive, just because I'm so committed to coaching mastery and ensuring that coaches actually graduate and have really great skills and confidence. And so I was teaching the drama triangle, the original Karpman's body of work, which, if you don't know, comes from, Dr. Stephen Karpman, transactional analysis. And it's a really great relational dynamic model. So I was teaching it on the whiteboard, which is the victim, the rescuer, and the perpetrator. In his version, I've changed it to the aggressor. And so victim, aggressor, rescuer. And as I was writing it on the whiteboard, what was also happening in the room, the context that I was teaching it in, was I had these two women who were in a conflict, who were both students of mine, both coaches, who were in a conflict in the room at the time. And it was just kind of bubbling below the surface. And one of the coaches was a very beautiful, very kind of high-flying business coach, and very direct and kind of very yang energy, out there, go getter, no nonsense, very direct type of person. And she was running a weight loss coaching business at the time. And one of the other students who was in the room was a mum, was kind of just getting into coaching for the first time, more for her own personal growth to begin with, and then kind of thinking about running a business in the future. But she was more in the carer space and wanting to lose some weight herself. And so she had connected with this other coach and was doing one of her programs, but there was some discord in there. And I was like, oh, how can I teach this drama triangle model in a way that is going to serve both of these people who are currently in a conflict right now, not active, like they're all civil and everything was fine, but and they're both lovely people, right? It's nothing against either of them, but there was just a drama dynamic playing out. And so as I was teaching the drama triangle model, it started to unfold in a new way because I asked myself this question while I was at the whiteboard of like, how can I teach this so it serves both of them? And so I started out, right, kind of drawing it how I used to draw it, which had the victim at the top and then the rescuer and then the aggressor. And then I was like, oh no, hang on, I need to flip it around. So the victim is at the bottom and the rescuer is at the side and the aggressor is on the other side. And so just to give you a brief overview, we all know, we all can relate to these ideas, the victim, the rescuer, the aggressor, as archetypes, as roles that any human being can step into or out of. But what happens in the drama triangle is that if you're playing the first insight of the drama triangle is people often resonate with one of the archetypes and really reject one of the archetypes. So some people reject the aggressor, some people reject the victim, like, oh, I don't want to have a victim mindset. And some people reject the rescuer as being some martyr, self-sacrificing martyr. And so depending on your conditioning and your particular pattern of traumas, you'll reject one and be kind of almost pushed by that repression into the other corner. And so one of the people was kind of really sitting in the aggressor and one of them was really sitting in the rescuer victim, more in the victim. And so then I was like, oh, okay, so how can I lead this? So it was like one was in the aggressor, one was in the victim. And so I was kind of being pushed into the rescuer position, but I'm like, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to teach this in a way that transforms the dynamic. And so I taught it in this way. I was like, hey, if you recognize yourself in any of these roles, the underlying structure of the drama triangle is, and this was kind of Karpman's insight, that when you play any one of the roles, you will actually also switch between all the roles. So he called it switching, of like, oh, if I'm in the victim, I switch to the rescuer, and then I switch to the aggressor, and I loop around and kind of scroll around, and that's the drama loop, right? And so these two women started to have their own kind of personal insights about this. And so then it kind of unfolded more, because when we think about perception and projection and those types of things, is like, oh, what you see or triggers you in someone else is often a trait that you have disowned in yourself. So, which of course, shadow work 101, right? So the person who was being really kind of meek and mild and in the victim space was getting really triggered by the entrepreneur coach's directness, assertiveness, like go get 'em attitude, because that was more of what she needed. And the coach that was like very assertive needed a little bit more of that softness and caring, empathy, and it's been really beautiful to watch the unfolding of each of these women as they've gone on their own kind of life journeys, and have both kind of found their way of integrating these realizations that started. So it was just like a little seed. I can't, it's not like they had a massive transformation in that moment, but it was just the planting of the seed of, maybe this person is not my enemy, not trying to get at, be out to get me. They're actually a reflection of something that I've disowned in myself. And so that was really the first, the real seed of the drama triangle model starting to, I feel like the geometry of it started to open up for me. And that's become this body of work that has become Heart Alchemy of how to transform drama. So does that answer your question?
Oh, absolutely. And one of the things that I love, because I very briefly touch on the drama triangle, because I just feel as facilitators, as space holders, as human beings, understanding a lot of these templates for relating that we kind of inherit.
Yes.
Particularly when we are in a leadership position, how it's so easy to unconsciously slip into our default.
Exactly.
And how I love when I teach that part, how everyone is always thinking about other people to begin with. It's like, oh, I can totally see where such and such is doing X, Y, and Z.
Oh, they're being such a victim. Oh, they're being such a rescuer. That person's such an aggressor. Yes.
What is it that you think creates that ability to access it so easily in others, but not necessarily having the impulse to immediately look in?
Well, I think it's interesting, like if you think about the roles and like you said, these kind of inherited power dynamic constructs that we have inherited. And if you think about the drama triangle as I really think about it as one of the fundamental constructs of our entire reality field, really, because like even from a young age, we're of a similar age, we've grown up watching fairy stories and movies, and like every single the storyline, the hero's journey follows this kind of story arc of hero, villain, victim, villain, this type of hero villain type of dynamic, and that's the core construct of what creates dramatic, engaging television or stories or fairy tales, or and so it's really deeply embedded in our psyche at an unconscious level about these kind of constructs. And so I think it's easier to see them in others, because when we are looking at someone else, we can identify that archetype. Like, oh, yes, I recognize that archetype because it's familiar to me in so many ways, like the hero with 1,000 faces, the villain with 1,000 faces. I can see it in someone else because I can relate it to something that I already know. But it takes a very self-aware person to get outside of their own stories to see how they're inhabiting that same construct. I love how Caroline Myss calls archetypes like cookie cutters of power. Have you heard her say that?
I haven't, but I love that.
Isn't it great? It's like, okay, so the cookie cutter, the shape of power that like the victim has a certain shape, like a firefighter has a certain shape. And so it talks about the structure of power and how that particular archetype relates to power. And so it's like whatever the cookie dough is that you put into that shape, that's your personal content, but the shape is the same. Like a firefighter is a firefighter is a firefighter, and a mother is a mother is a mother, whether it's your own personal story, it's still you're caring for some child. And so I think it's easier to see the shape in someone else because you're not clouded by the personal content. When you're inside when you're inside the cookie cutter yourself, you're all in the cookie dough, feeling all of your own stories and all of your own, like, they did wrong by me, and then you're kind of all in your own stuff. And it's much easier to see the structure in someone else because you have distance. And I think people, unless you're in the field like we are, which actively trains metacognition, where you're having some distance from your own self and from your own thoughts, unless you have a very well-trained self-awareness metacognition habit, it's very difficult to get the required amount of distance to see, oh, I'm being the asshole in this situation. You're all up in your feelings and your somatic experience of it's like, oh, I'm so wounded. Oh, I'm so angry. You're kind of clouded by your emotions and your sensory experiences, and you can't, see the forest for the trees, so to speak.
It's to your point about metacognition. I have been really looking at the context of how people are relating online at the moment. For a lot of people that are operating businesses, an inevitable aspect of a business in 2026 is likely to be some interfacing with social media and the discourse that takes
Indeed.
place on social media. And I don't know if you're a South Park fan. I'm just going to take a top road for a second.
I have seen South Park. I haven't seen all of South Park, but I have seen some key episodes, yes. I used to watch it. I don't have much time to watch TV these days, so I'm very discerning about what I watch.
The reason I bring them in is because they have obviously created a fair bit of controversy in the last couple of years. And people were saying, why has the program become increasingly politicized? And the creators commented that from our very beginning, we have always been commentators on popular culture.
I was going to say they were always politicized. Like they've been political all the way back. Like they did the Jackson holding the baby. They've done all sorts of things over the years that have been very political. Maybe people are just noticing it because they're hyper aware of it now.
And this is kind of where I suppose I was wanting to connect the dots and ask your opinion on this, because they were saying that politics has now crossed the threshold into more cultural relevance, as opposed to politics being something that we needed to go and seek actively. It's now become something that we're following almost the way that we used to follow J-Lo and Ben Affleck. It's like we're aware of this stream of media where these political figures are now becoming more prominent, I suppose, in our awareness in terms of what's fed to us on social media.
Yeah.
I'm curious from this level of understanding the relational dynamic and that potential template that can play out. Do you think it's a lack of metacognition or a lack of media literacy that is starting to create some of the hotbed that we're kind of inside?
Yeah. Oh, I think it's both and more, right? I think it's both. I think there's, oh my God, and so many other things. It's like I could list them off. But yeah, I think there is where to even begin. I think political figures are using social media strategies and using strategies of celebrity to, we only need to look not that far to see celebrities becoming leaders of countries and maybe, running more on popularity rather than policy. And so that's an interesting dynamic. And then when you think about the lack of media literacy, to your point, is like people maybe not understanding just the level of propaganda that is fed or curated stories that are coming through the media and really have always come through the media. It's just becoming, I think, more inflammatory and more polarizing because of the shortened attention spans. And, in the past we would read the Sydney, we're Australian. In the past we would read the Sydney Morning Herald or the Guardians, UK, but you would read a newspaper where there was journalistic integrity and there was a bit more nuanced perspectives and it was a long article. And so you would have more space for more nuanced understanding, and it wasn't just pushing on rage bait buttons for algorithm attention. It was actually trying to convey a point and to educate the masses around certain things. Whereas I think the the post-truth world that we're living in, postmodern, we're living in an era where our attention is constantly being hijacked so that we can be fed ads. And so then politics just becomes a part of the attention hijacking strategies, and then, then polarizing, infighting on comments around politics and stuff. Like my partner was on X for a while, and he said he went through his, he's very clever on training his algorithm. And he went through and he's like, I don't want to hear anything political, but it's almost impossible to not get anything political on X or Twitter or any of those things, because it's just flooded with politics, and particularly American politics, but then now, all of the kind of ripple effect of all of that. So I think we're being hijacked into drama deliberately because the agenda of the social media companies is to keep our attention and keep our engagement. That's their agenda, because if they keep our engagement, they can sell us ads and they can keep us longer and longer on the platform, which obviously is a huge neurological addiction, thing and all of that. And so the politics just feeds into that. I think then also people are not aware of, when they are hijacked, of being able to circumvent something that has been intentionally pushing on their buttons. Like, oh, you see some news about genocide, and then you see, someone rescuing a puppy, and then you see someone selling you some toothpaste, and then you see some, expensive sneakers. And it's like so your mind is just kind of ping-ponged around through these kind of huge dopamine, serotonin stakes to keep you engaged. And I think people are not aware that that is an intentional strategy of social media companies, and I think they're not aware of how dangerous it is, although that's certainly becoming more. The awareness around that, I think, is becoming more prevalent, because lots more people are kind of switching off, trying to prioritize, digital detox, time in person with people. There's so much that we could say about all of that.
I'm aware it is a massive rabbit hole, but I did want to
It's
speak.
a mess.
I think not only as practitioners, yes, we're being immersed in it, being that we do interface with online platforms for business, but also the people that we're serving. We're increasingly living dual lives. We have an online life and a real flesh body drive around in my skin suit life. And I'm noticing increasingly where these unconscious drama triangles of these narratives that are being spread online are then being taken offline into the reality that we are existing in day to day. So in terms of practitioners supporting clients that are potentially getting hooked into these narratives that then inevitably can spin off into rabbit holes that, for better or worse, become pipelines into more extreme views, how do we support people in those moments?
Oh, so good. Such good questions. I think it's, one of the principles that I often say to my practitioner students or coach students is you can't take a client deeper than you've gone yourself. And so I think there needs to be not because people can misunderstand that of like, I have to have done everything that I want my client to be able to do, which is not the point. It's how deep have I gone into my own psyche? How much metacognition awareness do I have about myself? And then from that level of presence and awareness and cognitive flexibility, then I have the capacity to support someone else to increase their cognitive flexibility and their metacognition to be able to expand in whatever is their particular context. So I think that is really the key, is like us doing our own work and being aware. And I think there's this really interesting, one of the benefits of this current tsunami of sensory overload and inflammatory content and like rage bait hijacking and, you know, all of these mixed in with actual truth, mixed in with actual truth. It's just like, just sprinkle a little bit of truth in there and then inflame it with all this nonsense. And then either the truth gets dismissed as nonsense and bypassed, or it becomes a pipeline for something else. I think when we realize that and go, okay, so we can't actually trust anything that we see on the internet. You can't take anything that you see on the internet as fact. What that forces us to do is to come back into our own inner knowing and to be vigilant around our locus of control, which is something that I've been kind of talking on a lot lately. Is I think the antidote to being hijacked by these things, and I've certainly, I've been there, I've gotten hijacked. I'm sure you have too, and I've gone down rabbit holes, and I've been, in emotional despair about some of the horrific, heinous things that are going on in the world. But I have no control over that. I have no control over stopping child trafficking. I have no control over, what's happening in Iran. I have no control over whatever nonsense Trump chooses to do this week or today or next week. It's like I have no control over that. And allowing myself to get hijacked by that and more emotionally invested in something that I have zero control over, means that I will feel powerless, angry, upset, stressed, and all of my attention and energy is going into something that is not fulfilling my destiny or how I can move forward in the world or how I can make a difference in my world. And so I think one of the most important things for us to remember is locus of concern, locus of control, and to be vigilant about returning to what am I actually in charge of? What is actually important to me in my real flesh suit world? I had a really visceral experience of this when Cardinal Pell was being investigated in Australia around child sex abuse charges. And I went deep into the rabbit holes then, and I was like, all right, I'm investigating this. And, there's, my father was raised was schooled by Jesuit priests. He's Irish Catholic and was a boarding school. And so there's like that thread of sex abuse by priests is in my family. So it is personally relevant to me. And so that's why it hooked me, and so I went down that rabbit hole and I went into all of the, all of the Pizzagate and all the different things and the sensory horror of truth mixed in with, whatever, propaganda. And I did it for a little while and I was like, oh my God, and the kind of the uncoverings of that, which a lot of people are kind of going through now with the Epstein files coming out. And just the huge grief and the huge, sense of suffering and loss and devastation and like, how can this happen? And, the horror of it. And then I found myself like putting my boy to bed, and I normally sing him a bedtime song. Like they've grown out of it now. They don't need their bedtime songs anymore, but I used to sing them bedtime songs every night. While I was singing him his bedtime song, a part of my mind was still distracted thinking about that and thinking about all the children that never get a bedtime song and all the parents who, don't get to put their kids to bed because they've been abducted or what have you. And I was just like, I was a mess inside myself. And also, and so he said to me, he's very intuitive. He's like, Mom, why are you sad? And I said, oh, buddy, I'm just thinking about all the kids that, that don't get to do this, and all the parents that don't get to do this, and all the children that have been separated from their parents, or the parents who, blah, 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 blah. And then I was like, I thought about it afterwards, and I was like, okay, so this, yes, I can have compassion for this situation, and I can't let myself be drowned in grief for things that are not mine to solve. My job is to be a good parent to my children and to support the children of, of my children's friends, and to support, the children that I sponsor through, charities that I sponsor. It's like my job is to support the children that I have contact with, and to do my work in the world so that people are better parents to their children, and that's what I have control over. And while I get hijacked by things that I don't have control over, it's my work to alchemize that into something I can do something about. And I think that's our opportunity as coaches and healers in this world, is to find the threads of the things that trigger us, explore whatever that, brings up for us, work through the grief, work through the suffering of it, and alchemize it into something that you can actually move forward with and you can actually do something about. And so that's how I approach it. And I think that's kind of shadow work with the culture. It's like finding something that triggers you, finding why it has triggered you, alchemizing the trigger so that then you become not immune, but resilient to the world, and then you can actually operate within the world. It's like one of the things that I really feel is an important principle of power, is to meet the world as it is, not as you want it to be, not as, not railing against, it shouldn't be like this. It's like, well, it is like this. So there are parts that are really fucked up. And how do we deal with this? How do we deal with what is and still keep our hope alive? Well, we need to be really aware, and we need to be really emotionally attuned and have the awareness to be able to deal with what comes up and turn it into something positive,
Absolutely love that, because I feel so much. If I was to boil down my experience of so much of what coaching facilitation really is, it's a return to agency. It's like what we support people with is the integration of their own will to power and relationship with, their own highest aspects of self, how they want to speak to that. And I feel part of why I was so excited to have this conversation with you is that we are existing in a cultural context that is leveraging the exact templates that your work is helping people to transcend. And so
exactly.
you want to say a little bit more about what heart alchemy is beyond the drama triangle? I would love that.
Yeah. Amazing. So one of the next level, so the kind of the work has unfolded in layers. It's like I'll get one piece and then the next piece unfolds and then the next piece, and it's happened over the course of 8 years or so to be now it feels it's a complete body of work. And so the first part was like recognizing the switching, and then realizing that the switching happened because of an imbalance in our ability to understand certain traits. So the traits between the traits that connect the victim and the rescuer is the trait of responsibility and ownership. And so the victim takes not enough ownership, the rescuer takes too much ownership. And so it's like, okay, so if I can learn how to be balanced in my responsibility and ownership, I can navigate my way out of this pendulum. And then the connection between the rescuer and the aggressor is the trait of empathy, right? Of caring about others. So that the rescuer cares too much about others and the aggressor cares not enough. The aggressor doesn't give a shit about others. And so if I can master empathy, I can get out of that dynamic. And then the other line is between the victim and the aggressor, and that's the line of assertiveness and confidence. And so the victim has not enough, the aggressor has too much. And so then we can kind of employ what I like to call affectionately the Goldilocks principle of finding not too hot, not too cold of each of these traits. And so that's one of the ways we can unlock the drama. Is like, where am I out of balance? Where am I having too much care for others and not enough care for myself? Where am I taking too much responsibility for others and not enough responsibility for myself? Where am I, not being assertive enough? Or where am I being too assertive? And when we start to shift this, then we get a felt sense of how to navigate out of drama. And the part that it really shifted for me was when I realized that yes, we can see them as archetypes like the cookie cutters, but they're also qualities of the heart. The victim is brokenhearted. And so then it brings in this somatic layer of like, oh, the victim is brokenhearted. They're wounded. Their heart is wounded or broken in some way. So it's like, oh, the pain and the suffering and the vulnerability of the victim. And the rescuer is the bleeding heart, the one that's caring for everybody else, doesn't want anybody else to suffer, wants to save the world. And so a lot of coaches, I've talked to a lot of coaches about this, and coaches largely resonate with being the rescuer. And when you think about it, the rescuer as well is kind of the celebrated archetype out of those three, right? It's like, oh, they're the hero. They're the one that runs into the burning building and helps others and is selfless. And, they're the good one out of the dynamic, right? And so coaches tend to fall into this pattern, but it creates this problem where we end up being the wounded healer, giving without being in fair exchange, or giving in a way that, it depletes us. And so we end up kind of burning out, and we see all these conversations about, oh, your coaching business is burning you out. And it's like, yeah, that's the rescuer dynamic playing out. It's like your bleeding heart all over the place. And so the other dynamic is the aggressor, which is the guarded heart. The aggressor has locked up their heart and like, nobody's getting into this heart. I've got my guard up and no one can get in. And so it's when we see these three dynamics as qualities of the heart, from wounded, bleeding, and guarded, it's like these are all just different aspects of a wounded heart in some way. And so, okay, so if we heal our own shit and we deal with our own emotional stuff, and like you can overlay mummy daddy issues on there because your mother might have been a rescuer, your father might have been the aggressor. It's like the victim is closest related to the child because they've got the least amount of power in the dynamic, they've got the least amount of agency. So it's like, take your pick. We can go down that rabbit hole too. But it's like, oh, okay, once I start to heal my stuff, I can actually become wholehearted, really wholehearted, and have the courage to then step forward into something that is deeply meaningful. And I really love, courage comes from the French word related to core, which is actually the heart. So it's like you can't have courage until you have that kind of wholehearted sense of, oh, okay. And, when we speak to David Hawkins' work, then courage brings us in the tipping point from force into power. And so it's like, oh my God, all these models are so perfectly intertwined. So I just have a little, model braingasm of excitement when all of these things came together. Like, oh my God, this is the answer to all of the problems in society. Oh my God. so like when we have the courage to actually follow our heart, then we can become a co-creator with reality and, regain that agency. Like you said, it's like, this is the shift, the first initiation from victim to co-creator, where you're no longer at the mercy of circumstances or your race or your culture or how much money you have or, whatever suffering you've endured. You're no longer the victim of that. You can metabolize those experiences and do something useful with them. So yeah, that's where it gets exciting. That's my oh, I got to share this with the world.
I love that you went straight to the David Hawkins thread, because I went immediately there as soon as you mentioned courage. And like, yes, exactly. And the word metabolize, I think, is so important, because I think one of the lenses that I've been really looking at facilitation coaching through, and a lot of the systems and modalities that I've learned through the time and even developed, is what does it mean to meaningfully engage with some of this material that maybe people are still in the process of metabolizing? It's like, yeah, we don't all start off at the same point. People are starting
We don't.
different places. So
Yeah.
I'd love to hear a little bit more around, I guess, where you feel that metabolization, and how do we support people to do that in a way that sees them in their highest, but also acknowledges where they're starting from.
100%. Yeah, I think that's a really critical nuance and an awareness, especially as leaders. And I think this is something that, I was talking to our other friend Dane about the power dynamics of, when you're in power. I can't remember the specific study, but the gist of it is, when you're in power the longer you're in power, the less empathy you have for the people you are guiding, supporting, ruling over. And so I think that's something that we need to be very mindful of as leaders in whatever spaces we're in, is that people come from all different backgrounds, from all different levels of awareness, from all different family dynamics, from all different cultural race, all of those things. And we can't spiritually bypass that. It's like, yes, everybody is equal in the sense that we are all souls that have infinite potential. And if you can't pay your mortgage or you can't pay your rent, you're about to be kicked out on the street, that's a very real survival issue. Or if you're facing systemic oppression everywhere you turn, you're not playing the same game as someone who doesn't have that that setback, and so I think really balancing the awareness that personal growth is not a solution to systemic issues. Personal growth does not outweigh systemic context. And it's not, because that's just spiritual bypassing. It's like, yes, you can love and light your way through all of your trauma, or you can just you can just visualize your way out of it. No, well, if you're actually in a situation where you're being trafficked, no matter positive thinking is going to fucking get you out of there. It might help you survive inside it, but it's not going to change your systemic context, if you actually are powerless. So I think we need to have a lot of awareness around this. And I think this speaks to, oh God, so many things. The level of awareness and maturity of one's development as a coach, and one's development as in their own personal growth and their own development through the spiral dynamics levels. If a lot of people come into coaching because they, particularly over the last 10 years or so, as coaching has exploded and the online coach, everyone's being marketed. You can get a life coach certificate for $7 in 3 days or whatever. It's like the level of maturity and awareness is like, when you're a beginner coach, you don't have any of this awareness. And so people are often going out with the best of intentions and unwittingly doing harm through their own lack of awareness. Like, this is classic Dunning-Kruger bias of, what they call it, the amount of stupidity, where you just know enough. You just know enough to do something, but not enough to know how little you actually know. And so you have that kind of peak of confidence because you don't know how hard it is. And it's only until you kind of learn a bit more, you're like, oh, there's a whole lot more here. And I think that's a lot of where the critique of the coaching industry is valid. And we're talking about, a lot of people are talking about a trust recession now. Like, it's come out of nowhere. Like, the trust recession is a response to a lack of competence and a lack of ethical standards and a lack of awareness and maturity in the coaches that learn marketing before they learn delivery. Oh my goodness, there's so much to say. But when I think about this kind of systemic personal issue, it's like it takes a certain level of personal maturity to even get to the level of cognitive awareness to understand these systemic issues with any empathy. You know, if you're still in your, you know, if we go to spiral dynamics and go, okay, if you're in beige and you're just trying to sell something so you can make your rent, then you're not going to be very aware of anybody else's issues because you're just in your own survival, right? If, you know, if you're in orange meme and you just want success and you want to make $1 million and you want to build your life, you know, build your empire and, you know, have thousands and thousands of clients paying you, you know, as much money as they possibly can for as long as they can, you're not caring about, you know, accessibility or, you know, people's ability to even get results in your program. It's just like, do they have a credit card? Can they pay? And it's not until, you know, that shift between orange and green where people start to kind of open up to, oh, there is an awareness of difference that I need to be cognizant of in my practice. And then even kind of reaching this yellow meme where you can actually start to think systemically about all of these factors. I just don't think it's possible for people to have that level of awareness until they've gone through that journey. You know, it's like, would I, and I used to be really mad about it. I used to be really mad and I used to be quite righteous about it and like, oh, these people are being like, they're doing the wrong thing and they're like messing people up and they're just so like, you know, and I was in my own righteousness about it. And I had to really go through that and realize, you know what, you can only have ethics, and you can only have ethics to the level of cognitive awareness that you have. You know, like you can't hold a kindergartner to university level standards because they're a kindergartner. And so as I've matured in my own journey, I'm a lot more compassionate and have a little bit more like okayness with, okay, there's going to be coaches of all different kinds. Some are going to be baby coaches spouting off nonsense and thinking they're the world's best. And there's going to be people that are just in it for the money. And there's going to be people who want to save the world and run wounded healer patterns, you know, and we're just going to be here continuing to try and raise standards and increase systemic awareness. And some people will take us up on that and some people won't. And I'm just going to keep doing it because that's what's meaningful to me, you know? Yeah.
I can so resonate with that journey. When I first created Artemisia, I look back at the version of me that just really wanted to police the coaching industry. It's like, this is all of the things that we're doing wrong. And I read back on the post that I would write, and now I have, of course, the necessary cringe to know I'm so much more superior now than I was back then. But again, more compassionate and understanding that, as you say, it's like everything is so much more clear in hindsight.
Exactly. And you needed to go through that stage. Like that's your blue meme stage of like regulations, rules, standards, you know, we should all be certified. I've got plenty of posts like that too from, you know, eight years ago or so. And I think to the cringe, I even have a lot of compassion for the cringe now. I'm like, oh, that's like, oh, look at baby Kylie still figuring her shit out, you know, and I'm sure in 10 years time, I'll look back at me now and go, oh, sweet Kylie, she's still figuring things out, you know, and I'll always be figuring things out. And so, yeah, I have a lot more compassion for the journey now and a lot more compassion of like just clocking where I'm at, clocking where other people are at and being like, okay, well, that's the level that they're at. And they're going to go on their consciousness evolution journey and they're going to go regardless of, you know, I might have a contribution to that. I might not. They might reject what I'm saying. They might not. They might love what I'm saying. They might pedestal me. They might pit me, you know, whatever. We're all just doing our own thing on our own journey and we like bump up against each other. And hopefully we grow as a result of it. And I think that's what I love about the coaching industry is that everybody's here to grow, you know, Everybody's here to grow, and everybody's willing to learn, and everybody's open to the degree that they're able to be open to learning and growing, and as they get more capacity, they can grow more. As we get more capacity, we can grow more. And then we know better, and then we do better, and blah, 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 blah. It's like we're just going through a maturity phase in coaching. And I'm glad that there is a trust recession, because it means that buyers are more skeptical, and it forces operators that are not operating ethically to start to do something about it, because otherwise they're losing business. So it's like the market is self-correcting right now. And so I think that's actually a really good thing. And we'll just see how it plays out. I'm still going to be here. I've been doing it for 22 years. I'm just going to keep doing it, and we'll see what happens,
And I think it's really important to look at that corrective element inside of this, like understanding, and I know that you get this, but more for people listening, it's like it is that energetic principle, and coming back to the Hermetic axiom of rhythm, it's like it is the fluctuations. And over time, we hope that those fluctuations create a more stable center, I feel, in the long run.
Yeah.
I know that one of the ways that you are really supporting people to have those opportunities to, I guess, course correct is through SuperCoach. So how can people find out more about that?
Well, I have, so I've been training coaches now since my daughter was born. So I've been training coaches for 14 years now. I was training coach certifications with NLP, and then now I also run the Spiral School with a whole bunch of amazing practitioners. But what I found was, when I was just running certifications are amazing for taking someone on a specific journey and ensuring that they have a body of work and a body of skills that are coherently taught in a sequential order that expands their knowledge and gives them then a baseline where they can, start and finish and go, yes, I've got this thing. I can go out and do something with it. But what I find is that even after the certification, that there is still a lot of growth and skill development that is required, to actually integrate that body of work and see what happens when the rubber hits the road and you're out with a client and you're like, what do I say now? Or how do I deal with this problem? Or what's going on there? And so I've developed SuperCoach to meet a need that I see in the marketplace of an ongoing skill development container for coaches who are either certified or not certified. I don't really care. If you want to grow your skills, you're welcome in SuperCoach, and I have online training to support people who need that skill development, but then running, monthly masterclasses and skill development workshops and personal growth workshops to support people in their own, like coaches are always helping others, but who's helping the coach, and who's developing the coach's skills? And so I've really taken that upon myself to go, okay, I'm going to be the queen of coaching excellence and help people develop their skills ongoing. Like in psychotherapy, there is a requirement for ongoing professional development. There is a requirement for supervision, and that's professionally mandated. But in the wild west of the coaching industry, we don't have those mandates. But I am inspiring people to do that of their own accord and of their own volition, to go, yes, I do need ongoing professional development. Yes, I do need skill development. Yes, I do need supervision. And that leads to real business outcomes of better results for my clients, better retention of clients in my business, better results and referrals, and increased reputation of my, of who I am and how I show up. And so all of those things become an antidote to this trust recession, because you know what you're doing, you can get results, people talk about you, and you get raving fan referrals, and your business grows, and you kind of insulate yourself from the nonsense that's happening in the world through your own integrity and your own commitment to principles. And so SuperCoach is really about that, and just creating a space for coaches who do have a commitment to excellence and who do have a commitment to ethical practice to come and gather. And it's not like any coach of any niche at any revenue level is welcome. It's like you don't need to be making $1 million. You could be just starting out. But if you're committed to growth and you want to come and learn, you're welcome. And so, so supercoachsociety.com is where you can find out about that. Or you can follow me on all the social places. I'm around on the internet, on Facebook and Instagram, and not so much on Twitter or TikTok. I can't be bothered with those. Occasionally on Substack. But yeah, you can find me on the internet. And if you're a coach and you have a certification and you want some more support, just with the day-to-day practice of coaching, whether that's one-on-one or group, you can come and be a part of SuperCoach. And I'm making it, as affordable as possible to meet the needs of the current economic dynamics of what's going on in the world. And so, there's definitely a range of options to meet you where you're at. So come check it out. And I'd love to have you be a part of it if you've resonated with what I've said.
Well, I definitely resonate. It's part of, I love that you've built it in as such a secular approach, regardless of where you're coming from. Like with Artemisia, I offer an ongoing mentorship for the same reason, with skill revision.
Awesome.
That's all.
Perfect.
And the importance to be able to allow spaces that are dynamic and interacting with other coaches out of other disciplines. I can just imagine the value that the coach brings in that way too. This has been a blast, Kylie. Thank you so much.
It's been super fun. Yeah, it's been super fun. I really love that interdisciplinary stuff. It's like business coaches, transformational coaches, intuitive healers. We're all here to get better. There's so much we can learn from each other. It's really awesome. But yeah, it's been an absolute joy talking with you, Jess. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Any closing thoughts?
Yeah, I think I can always come with a bit of evangelism and rallying purpose cries. So I think, most of the people who are listening will be coaches themselves or wanting to be in coaching or personal growth. And I think anyone who is deeply committed to their own self-awareness and their own personal growth and helping others, whether that be as a coach or a leader in some way, like we're on the front line of human evolution. We are actively doing our best to support, to grow as human beings, to grow our consciousness, to raise our consciousness, to give back to the world, to be a beacon of hope in a time of great darkness. And so I think, just celebrating wherever you are on that journey, whether you're a beginner or you've been at it for, a decade or more or whatever, however much revenue you have, whatever niche you have, like keep going. You're doing great work and just stay on the journey. It matters. It's bringing a tear to my eye. Like it really matters. And I think we need more people doing this work. And, I think more people having more self-awareness is the solution to the craziness of the world that we're in, and is going to help us build a better future for our children and our grandchildren, like for the future of humanity. I feel like this work is existentially important, it really is. And I think when we can connect with that higher purpose of my work matters, my personal growth matters, my thriving matters, I think that can give us hope and resilience and support when things seem dark in the world. And, know that if you've helped yourself, you've grown yourself, or you've helped one person today, you're doing a great job. Like keep at it. Yeah, that's it.
No notes. Absolutely.
Right? Like it's so important. It's so important. And yeah, I think we can lose sight of that when we're in the, oh my God, how do I get my next client? Or I've got to fix this fucking funnel page or whatever. We can lose sight of that in the tech and the drama of it, but it really matters what you're doing. And like when we can come back to mission, that can see us through the darkest times, and we need that through these times right now. So thank you for your service, Jess.
Likewise, Kylie, absolutely incredible. And if you're not already following Kylie, I'll make sure all of her details are down in the show notes and also the link to check out SuperCoach. But make sure you're following along. She's absolute wealth of wisdom.
Thank you, Jessicka. Thanks for having me.
Okay.